get started on this book project, you should have downloaded the Lesson 13 folder. And when you're ready, double-click on the 13 Start Photoshop document. Now, if you get a profile missing warning or any kind of warning dialog box, feel free to say OK to ignore that. The first thing we need to do for this is to go to File and Save As. And let's rename this 13 Working and put your name on it. We'll say Save. Now, whenever you work with any kind of design, whether it's for print or for web or for mobile design, it's very common to use little placeholder graphics like these to temporarily place and plan out where you want to put buttons and other graphics. So the first thing we want to do is to make some placeholders using our frame tool. Now, since this document is meant to be for web graphics, let's make sure our units of measure are in pixels. Open up Photoshop's Preferences. If you're on a Macintosh, you can find the preferences or the settings under the Photoshop drop-down menu. If you're on a Windows, go to the Edit menu and your preferences and settings should be down here at the very bottom. In either case, go to your settings and let's find the units and rulers. Under the units, make sure your ruler is set to be pixels. And then down at the bottom, let's set our column and gutter size to be 180 points with a gutter of 12 points. We'll say OK to this. Finally, let's make sure our rulers are turned on by going up to View. And when you go down to Rulers, there should be a check mark beside it. Mine's already turned on, so we're good to go for that. And then finally, let's open up the Information panel. I don't see it over here on the side, so I'll go up to Window and choose Info. And this is going to help us determine our X and Y location as well as our height and width of anything that we create. Finally, there are some rules that are already turned on, and these guidelines, in my case, are turned off or invisible. If you can't see the guidelines, go up to View, down to Show, and make sure to turn on your guides. Now that the guides are turned on, you can see where these guides line up, and it's going to make it much easier to add our graphics. Going over to our Tools panel, locate the Rectangular Frame tool. With this tool selected, make sure you're working with the frame that's rectangular up at the top, and we're going to click and drag over this top gray area to make a frame right inside from there. Notice that it has a blue X going through it. This indicates that it's not just a vector graphic, but it's actually a placeholder frame. To put something inside of it, notice that in our Layers panel, we've got a frame layer selected. We can go up to File, and in this case, let's place it by linking it to an actual image. We can locate our graphic inside of the Art folder, and we're going to add the North Shore JPEG and say Place. This will put the picture nice and inside of that area, and you can see how it's automatically masked off. Let's also have a look at our Layers panel to explain a few things. So notice that our icon has the shape and placement of the frame, and then here's the picture that we're linking to. That's why there's a little link right there. Both of these are independent, but they work together inside of the same layer. Now, if you want a frame to be at an exact position, you can create a frame at any time. I'm just going to click and drag and make one down here. With it selected, have a look at your Properties panel. Notice that it has a width and a height, as well as an X and a Y location. We want the width and the heights to be exactly the same. So for now, I'm going to unlink them and make the width be 180 pixels and the height be 180 pixels. The X and Y location for the X is going to be 40 and the Y location is 648. Notice that this automatically places it right inside of this area. In our Layers panel, you can see how we've got our blank frame. Now, if we want to duplicate this frame, there's a couple of options we have. One of the easiest things you can do is to drag a layer down to the New Layer icon, and it automatically copies that frame. Now, it does copy it right on top of it, so let's move it over. So with that frame copy selected, change the X position to be 300. You can see that it moves it over. Let's do this 2 more times. So one more time, let's choose frame 1, make a copy of it. There's copy 2. This time change the X position to be 550. It gives me another one there. And then one more time, let's make a copy of frame 1 by dragging it to the little plus sign. And let's change its X position to be 800. Thus giving us our 4 different frames right on top of the gray squares. Let's choose our first frame. Another way we can link to graphics here is in our Properties panel, is to inset the image. And let's do it from the local disk linked. This will ask us to choose the one that we want. So let's choose Beach and say Open, and there it is placed there. Let's do the same for the next frame. Select the next frame, which will be our first copy. Again, place from a local disk. We'll choose North Shore JPEG and say Place. It's automatically placed in there. Another way you can place images is by dragging them and dropping them into the area. However, rather than simply dragging and dropping, hold down the Alt key if you're on a Windows or the Option key if you're on a Mac whenever you drag and drop. I'm going to choose the DYoung JPEG. In my case, hold down the Option or the Alt key and drag it on top of here, and it automatically links into there. If you don't do that, it's going to embed it. Finally, let's do the main one. So hold down Option, click and drag, and drop it into here. Now at any time, if you need to, let me zoom in so we can see this. We need to move these around or adjust it. For instance, I need this one to be a little bit bigger. You can select the image and the layers panel, and then you can go up to Edit, and you can transform it. In our case, let's scale it up to be a little bit bigger. And we can click and move it around until it's a little bit better in our composition. I think that looks better. Let's do the same for some of these others. So with it selected, make sure you've got just the image selected. This will allow you to click on the inside of it and move it around and place it right where it needs to be. Now let's add a guide underneath each of these. Clicking on the horizontal ruler at the top and dragging down, let's go all the way down till it reaches 795. Now if yours is off by a little bit, that's okay. Let's use our zoom tool now and go down and zoom in to this first image. Just bring it up so it's nice and large enough to see. And let's add our rectangle on top of this lower area. Let's go up to the top and make sure you're working in shape mode. Let's set the fill color to a specific color by clicking on the color picker. The hex code for this one is going to be 194879, which is this shade of blue. And we'll say OK. Our stroke color can be set to none. Next, let's create a rectangle inside this lower portion by clicking and dragging and placing it inside of that area. Let's go over to our layers panel and rename this rectangle band. Also, while we're in our layers panel, make sure that band layer is on top of your beach layer. This way, this way they're all kind of in the same area. Since I'm talking about this picture, I want this to be on top of that one. Finally, let's choose our type tool. Make sure you've got the horizontal type tool. We'll go up to our options. Let's choose a font that's nice sans serif, something like Myriad, M-Y-R-I-A-D, Myriad Pro. The size of our font is going to be 18, and we can keep it strong in its display, and we want this to be centered text, and the color of it can be kept at white. One more time, I'm going to zoom in so I can see my rectangle I'm going to work with. When you click on the inside of this rectangle, it's automatically going to create a box for you that's in the same size and shape of the rectangle. Notice that we've got a new layer on top of this, and this is a type layer. So let's type in all caps, Gallery 1. I can see when I did that, it didn't set it to be 18 points. Let me reset that to be 18 points so it's nice and big. Now, of course, when you do this, this is going to be a little bit too tall at the top of it. So I'm going to use my type tool. I'm going to click on the edge of it. Let's drag it down till it's nice and centered inside of the blue rectangle that's behind it. All right, now have a look at your layers panel. Notice that Gallery 1 is on top of the band. Let's group both of these together. Hold down the Shift key and click on both of the layers to have them highlighted. You can then go up to the Layer panel and choose Group Layers. This will put everything into a folder called Group 1. We're simply going to double-click the name of it and call this Gallery 1. Finally, we want to put this grouping on top of all of the other frames that we have. If necessary, you may want to drag off your Layers panel and then make it larger so you can see everything. I'm going to click on this layer and drag it upward to place it inside of here. If you click on the little arrow, it'll open it up and you can see all the layers that are nested inside of this grouping. What we want to do next is to make a copy of this group and place one on each of the different pictures. In order to make the copy, choose your Move tool. Make sure Auto Select is turned off, and we're selecting an entire group. This will make it easier to get all of the layers inside of the group and not just one layer at a time. If you hold down the Option key if you're on a Mac or the Alt key if you're on a Windows, you can click and drag a group and drag it over to place it inside of here. Let's repeat that process for the others. Option, click and drag, and get it to fit inside of there, as well as here. Notice that as it copies, it's automatically going to make the copy inside of here. Going back, now let's make our different edits. Grab your Type tool. So this will be Gallery 2. This will be Gallery 3. And then finally, this will be Gallery 4. In addition to changing up the text, we need to also have the appropriate folder or grouping named as well too. So this will be Gallery 4 Group. We can close it out. If we open up Gallery Copy here, this will be Gallery 3. And close it out. This will be Gallery 2. We can close that one out as well. And of course, Gallery 1 is already finished. The final thing we want to do with each of these groupings is to place the appropriate picture inside of the appropriate folder. So with the beach frame selected, click that one and drag it into Gallery 1 folder. Notice that when it does it, it places it on top. So let's drag that now below the band so that you can actually see it. We can close that out. The next one is going to be the North Shore. Let's drag that into Gallery 2. Open it up and make sure that North Shore is below the band for it. Close it out. For Gallery 3, it's going to be the De Young frame. Drag it into there. Make sure it's below the band. And finally, the main one, we're going to drag that into Gallery 4 and place it below there. Now they're all nice and organized inside of your layers as well as on your composition. Just like you can add layer styles to individual layers, you can also add layer styles to entire groupings. Let's choose the Gallery 1 group and go down to the little FX and let's add a drop shadow to it. Inside of the layer styles, do make sure drop shadow is selected and checked on. For the settings, make sure the blend mode is set to multiply with a color of black. The opacity of it's going to be 27%, the distance of 9 pixels with a 19% spread and 18 pixels in size. Whoops, I didn't mean to say OK. Let's also add a stroke to this option. So make sure stroke is selected now and checked on. We're going to add a simple little 1-point stroke to the outside edge, to the inside edge. Make sure the color, in this case, is going to be set to a dark blue. We'll say OK to that. And now we can say OK. It's got the little stroke on the inside of it. If you go to the Layers panel, you can see how these effects are applied to this particular Gallery 1. If you hold down the Option key, when you click on the effects, you can drag and copy that to other layers as well. So hold down the Option or Alt if you're on a Windows, click and drag, and let go, on each of the different galleries to quickly and easily copy that and apply it to the other layers. Finally, to make it easier to see, let's close out all of the effects that are open so we can see all of our layers. We've reached a good stopping point. Let's go up to File and save our document for now, and we can close it out and get ready for the next part.